Hello and welcome to my video. Today I'm going to be doing a review on the book Onyx and Ivory by Mindy Arnett. And if I'm not saying her name right, I do apologize. I believe that's how you say it. Now, I finished this book probably a week ago now, and I really needed time to get my thoughts together. It is a duology. I think the next book is called Flame and Shadow. Couldn't tell you for sure. I do have it already from the library. I did get this book from the library as a blind date flip book. It had the pointers of betrayal, lovers to enemies, dragons, and there was one more that I can't remember at the moment, but it really did catch my attention. So I was very excited to start this book, and I am I wouldn't say disappointed in the book. I did just rate it 3.5 stars, which is a little low for me, but I had to take about a week to think about why do I feel this way about this book, and what more do I want from it, because I never want to rate an author lower than a 4 if the book, hits the points that I want it to hit and really kind of, achieves the goal that it's trying to achieve, and not like just doesn't have one. Like I love a moral standpoint to the book, or the story that is being told of growth or acceptance, something like that, which the story does have. So it had me, reflecting on it. And I'll try to get into more of that until after the run through. I am just going to try to do first a quick little run through of the book. Now, I'd love to say that if you are a horse girl, I would personally say I am a horse girl. I love riding horses. I do currently live in the city in an apartment and can't do that, but I would definitely say I was a horse girl growing up, but not an annoying one, if that means anything. But I only hesitate to say that because a horse, spoiler alert, does die in the first chapter. We really do get explained why, and it makes sense the horse was pushed to its limit, but it is still sad to happen, especially within, the first 2 chapters. An animal dying is sad. I mean, I would almost say sometimes that's worse than a character dying in the book, which, is an opinion. It's just my opinion. So I don't think that that's what threw me off. Now we start with Kate. That is our main female character, but we do switch points of views, like POVs, in the book. So it's not chapter by chapter. Sometimes you'll have multiple chapters of one person's point of view, and sometimes you only have one, and then you'll have the next one, and then you are switching. So that is not really consistent. But we start with Kate's for the first 2 or 3 chapters. I don't have the book in front of me anymore. But with Kate's, what we notice and what we're told from the beginning is that she is a traitor, but not exactly she. Her father was a traitor, so she is also marked as traitor. She even says she has the nickname Traitor Kate, which I would not say people would call, but you know what? In this person's world, they would, and so it just doesn't seem realistic to me, but in this person's world, that's how people act, and maybe that is how they used to act or something. But so she gets called Traitor Kate because her dad tried to kill the king. Her dad used to be the royal horse trainer, and he just one day tried to kill the king. That's all we know so far, and that's all she knows. She had to obviously leave town. She had to. She picked up this job, like a mail carrier is the best I will explain it. And you have to carry it between city to city during the day because at night there's these things called night drakes. Night drakes are like dragons. They're described as a little bit bigger than a horse and a little bit bigger than a bear, but as wide as a bear. It's like taller than a bear. But they don't fly. So they do have wings. They don't fly. I don't necessarily think they breathe fire now that I'm thinking about it or anything like that. I think they're probably just shaped like dragons. So they just have their claws are poisonous if I remember right. But that's why they have to be very quick and efficient, and cities have to be um, like one city can be like a day trip, like they go there during the day, spend the night at that station for the mail carriers, and then go back during the next day. And then some have posts around it. But to keep the city safe, we have ward stones that are fueled by magus, and magus are part of a league, and the league is in partnership with the crown. So we learn that. That's very important throughout the entire story is the magus and the wardstones. Now there are people called wilders. Wilders are people born with an element power. So think earth, metal, water, fire. There's a few different kinds out there, and then there seems to be this one called spirit. And spirit for the person who uses it, so the person who's born with it, first comes as connecting to animals. So you connect to their soul and kind of mind to mind and get them to do what you want them to do by showing it to them and they obey. Now, as a spirit or user ages, grows, they can also use that ability on people. Now, as it is, I know this theme is also in The Red Queen, which a lot of people say powerless trilogy. Copy The Red Queen. Personally, I've not read The Red Queen, but I do believe a lot of people on that. I will be reading that soon-ish. Could be over a year until I read that. I have a very long TBR, so we'll see how it goes actually. But it is the Wilders are banned, obviously, and only the people who have a little bit of magic and don't specialize anything and can kind of fuel these ward stones are made magus by the League. And we get told that, I believe, in the first chapter too, because she doesn't want people to know. Like, she has to be careful using her magic on the horses, and that's mainly what she uses it on right now. She doesn't know that she could have the option to use it on people one day. At the moment, she doesn't know much about her power. She keeps it a secret. She has told two people in town that she does seem to really trust, which is someone else who's a wilder. He's a medalist. Tom is his name, and then I think he's her name Singe. She's from the Isles, so you'll learn about those two as you read. I don't really want to fully spoil this for anyone. I just want to give kind of a glazed over review, I would say. You could still listen to this review and read the books and find out about things. But basically, they are the only ones who know that Kate has this power to connect with animals. And what we see next is the prince coming to town. Now, because Kay actually did grow up in the castle, her and the prince know each other. Kate and the prince were lovers, or as much as you could be lovers at 15 and 16 and everything. Sneaking kisses around the castle and stuff like that. This is a teen book. Just want to emphasize that. And even then, like, if they're underage, I don't think they'll ever go into much detail about it, obviously. But they were the quote-unquote lovers' enemies. So it's actually very interesting that they were lovers before the book started, but nothing against the book that was The Library, who put the lovers' enemies on the blind date of the book. So nothing to do with the author or the book for that one. But we then see the prince come into town, and we see Kate obviously run into him, and then we switch over to the Princess Corin's, I believe it's how you say his name, Corin, point of view. So in his point of view, we see that he regrets a lot with how him and Kate ended. He regret not helping her out more when everything went down. And there's multiple reasons for that, but we also see that he has been disappeared for I think 2 or 3 years and just came back. We don't really learn until later in the book what happened while he was gone, but that clearly traumatized him. He was in this kind of like army force almost. This division that he was in for a completely other continent. It was called the Shieldhawks, and he even has a tattoo from this time. And he has a magical bracelet that covers the area and makes it look like plain skin. So we immediately learn that like there is stuff that's happened since it all went down for Dad and everything. He just left. He left the castle. So I do believe he was also affected by that, even though her dad tried to kill his dad, from what we know. And he also has a best friend, Dao, who was a part of the Shieldhawks with him, and he is the sixth son of a lord, but the land and the people of the lord is over is not very vast or big or very important to the capital, so his family is not very important to the capital. So it's kind of surprising, I guess, for others in the court to see Dao with the prince. And it's that way because in this world, you do not know which prince is actually going to be the king. There is normally a sign that appears, I think it's called an Uru, U-R-U, and this sign signals the start of these pretty much games played out by the gods, which I'm still very confused in this entire thing on if it's gods or people with wilder powers putting this on. Whenever you get to that point in the book, you'll know more what I'm talking about, and it does kind of speculate that because it is like a magical trial, like think maze in the sky kind of thing. These stones that they're on are constantly moving and all that kind of stuff. Like, it is kind of crazy because it is a very magical thing, and whoever, or magical games, and whoever makes it out of this is actually the king. So he has an older brother. Now, growing up, everyone always favored Corwin as the king. They always thought he was kinder and more, not level headed, but not prone to anger in his emotions than his brother, which he, for a while, did not see it in himself to be king. And after everything went down, obviously, with Kate's dad, his dad, and him leaving, he no longer believed he was fit to be king because he didn't know how he should react in that situation. He didn't know whether or not Kate's dad should be held to execution. You know, he was technically, we find out, the one who ran in on Kate's dad trying to kill his dad. So it was very traumatic for him. And his dad has been messed up in the head and sick ever since. So he blames himself, you can see a lot, for actions that are really not in his control. So he doesn't want to be king anymore, and he's pretty much just gave the power all over to his brother, and his brother has been acting as king under their father, because like I said, their father is very sick. He has this kind of like, not madness, because he's not going mad, he's just not doing anything at all. He's like struggling to eat, he doesn't talk, he just sits there. When he does talk, he's kind of blabber, so they do call it, I think, a madness, but I don't know fully what it is, and they don't know either. No one can cure it. Because there's different levels to the league. There's greens, there's blues, there's browns, and I believe the browns or the greens are the healers. So with this magic that they do allow, they create a bunch of stuff. So that's really what we find out. I would say within the first for 6 chapters. And through this, obviously, there has to be some forced proximity because they become lovers again, as we know. I've already said that. So we face that with them going on the road together, which ends up being an accident because Kate is on a long trip where she has to stay at multiple different locations for the postal service. And while the prince and his cavalry, which are doing the tour right now, they end up having to be in one of these at the same time escape because of a day-drake attack. And the day-drakes are new. Normally, drakes only come at night. And throughout this, they think there is a organization, called the Rising that is going around and somehow making these drakes, which I don't even know how that would be possible. They say these drakes do not resemble any other kind of animal, so that's very surprising that they somehow think these wilders can raise these things almost from hell, it seems like. So we see that, like, the propaganda around these wilders is pretty crazy. Everyone's very, very scared of them. And you can't blame them for the stuff that the capital and the people in the league are telling them and telling them to be scared of. And Kate has kept this a secret from a lot of people most of her life because she is terrified of being taken away. There's this organization, the league, called the Golds, and they will come in and take anyone away and basically just kill them for everyone. Everyone knows. They don't really know what happens. They just know that they're probably sent to the execution. And they're supposed to do, maybe some people will become magus, because they don't really explain how people become magus, who can, who can't. They don't explain that at all. So that is like another point I knocked down for the author, because maybe it's just because Kate doesn't know the process, but it's not described at all how they find these people or how they know people only have a little bit of magic and not specialized, or that someone can do that. So maybe that's just like a lie, and the author is alluding to that. But through their journey, Tom, Kate's friend, has an invention, which is the revolver. So he has the revolver, a gun, and it can kill multiple drakes at a time, because right now they only have sequel-loaded, pretty much shotguns, and they can't obviously use those very well. So the revolver is a lot better for what they need. And of course, when the prince discovers this revolver and that Tom can make it, he immediately invites him to the capital, gives him a job. Now, I believe this is kind of alluding and showing you that the prince does still care about the people and does still care about possibly becoming king, because he wants to get back in the people in the court's good graces. He brings Tom there, he gives him a job, he makes sure Sins has a job, and he makes sure Kate is going to be accepted back too, because Tom is obviously like, I'm not going to the capital if I don't have my two best friends. So we really see him wanting to still be in the good graces and wanting to have the recognition for finding Tom and being able to make this revolver and get it into the hands of the people who are protecting the cities, and traveling at night, getting into the hands of the post people who are the most dangerous. And they really do consider the mail important, which the mail is extremely important. That is the number one way for them to get communication from city to city. So obviously they're going to treat protecting those people with the utmost importance. Kate is obviously very wary about this because she's going back to the capital. Everyone there in the city that she's in already treats her very badly, very poorly. So she is like, dang, this is not going to go good for me. People could discover me easier. My powers, people could discover Tom and his powers easier, especially because he uses his metalist abilities to make these revolvers, kind of thing. So she is very terrified of that, but he does make them, Corin the prince does make them a deal that they truly can't refuse. So they end up going to the capital, and at the capital, Kate really found out that her dad had a lot of secrets. I mean, she finds out he was more than just the royal horse trainer. She, in the way, finds out that he was involved in a lot of things outside of the court. He was involved with helping other wilders, and he knew about them too, and he never told her. And obviously, she was too young, but she is feeling a bit betrayed by that. So that's happening. She's discovering all this about her dad, and at the same time, for Corin, he has that magical sign, the viewer. I don't know, but that appears, and conveniently enough, it's a horse. And how they know that it's the magical sign is it'll always be split down the middle of white and black. So I think that's more of like a yin and yang kind of thing. So that appears and the trials start. And that's when Corin is like, these revolvers are being made, and that's really promising. I found that. And the signs appears. Maybe I could be king. It really dawns on him then that he might still have a chance. So that is great for our prince, and he really then starts to heal himself, and we find out about more that happened while he was away, and just more of what he is going through mentally. When we get to the end of the book, Kate does end up telling him finally about her powers, and he does take it better than you would think. But then that's kind of when all the action happens, probably in like the last 90% of the book, maybe the last like 85%, like I guess it would be the 15% of the book. And I think let's just get into why I would rate this book 3.5 stars. I have, I believe, two main points, and my first one is she doesn't really use description a lot in the sense of surroundings, what things look like, and to lead your imagination to picture that, what the characters are wearing, really in any shape or form. In the beginning, we get that with her post mailer. They're called something else in post mailers. I didn't tell you that, but they are. With her uniform, we kind of get that, and that she wears like pants underneath the skirt to ride better, but we don't really get that anywhere else throughout the book. And we don't get descriptions of buildings very much, the walls, what the wardstones look like. We don't even know it until I think the end that wardstones can just be gems. They can be emeralds. They can be turquoise. That you have to imbue gems and crystals to get a wardstone, actually. A wardstone could just be a diamond, which is crazy that we don't figure that out till the end. I was picturing rocks, I'm not gonna lie. Rocks with something carved into them, but not crystals and gems, just plain rocks, which maybe those could be wardstones. I don't know. And I think that's my first point is I have a lot of questions about technicalities, and I don't feel like they're nitpicky technicalities either. Like, I would like to know what the castles and what the strongholds look like. Is this more of a Gothic style? Are we doing more of like a European medieval style, or is this more of like an Italian medieval style? If that's a thing, I think. So I would just love more descriptions of things around the characters, I would say, as a whole. And then my second main point of this book, and kind of the not issue I have of it, just my opinion of why I would rate it 3.5 stars is I think kind of the climax of the book happened too late in the book. I prefer them to happen between 60 and 70%, 50% is still good, like right in the middle of the book. That's still good. 60 to 70 is still good. I feel like we were building up, ramping up until probably about like 75, 80% way through the book. And that kind of made me slow down at the 60, 70% mark of reading the book, even though it was only just over 400 pages. Or maybe it was like over 450, I don't remember. But I really slowed down in reading it because we were building, building, building. We were not reaching anything and we were not figuring out anything. We were just getting hit with new information, new information, new information. But it was just more like new information to the story, and I felt like some of it was a little bit unnecessary to drag on. I just wanted it to be more bam, 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 I guess. And it just didn't do that for me. That's more of the structure that I prefer in my books is, like I said, 50% for like the climax, especially if it maybe needs like a longer resolution, or that's whenever everyone has to go into like another traveling thing or something. So 60 to 70% is really good, I think, especially for a duology, because I do think you kind of also need almost two at that point, a main one, no, three, like two in the book, like so one in each book, and then kind of a main one overall. That's what I really love about duologies, is that they can still hit those points, and I do think that is actually harder to write than like a 6 book series, because you really have to make the point in a shorter amount of time. And that's just what I wanted to see from her, and I'm really not satisfied with the ending. I almost don't care about reading the second book because I struggled for this one. I am going to start it, give it a shot, see how I like it, but I might not be finishing it because I just have so many more books on my TBR. I currently have 4 books checked out from the library already that I want to get through. I'm already on another book right now, and I'm just really wanting to read books that I truly enjoy this year. And I have, like I said, a very, very long TBR that I have to conquer. So I would say that is my review of Onyx and Ivory by Mindy Arnett. I did overall have a pretty decent time. I would not say it is a bad book. I would say that I just needed more. More action, more faster pace, and more descriptions. And that's okay. I do think that some people could really like this book. I do think if you don't want a book with what feels like, I wouldn't say high risk actually. That's opinion on that one. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a good day or a good night.